everyone. It's Jerry here from Them Nerds. Here's my buddy Tony, also from Them Nerds. We're here today to do a little Throwback Thursday. We're going to go ahead and do Interview with the Vampire.
Keeping it spooky.
Yeah, so spooky. Early 90s classic. Tony, want to give a rundown of what we're talking about here?
Of course I do. I'm all about vampires. So, Interview with the Vampire was a 1994 film based on the 1976 Anne Rice novel of the same name. It was the first novel in the series that was known as The Vampire Chronicles, and the first of a few films. I think they only made three.
Queen of the Damned.
Queen of the Damned, and I swear they made another one. Maybe it was just Queen of the Damned. Just two.
I think that was all. Yeah.
They skipped over The Vampire Lestat, which was the second book, which is a great book. But anyway, the movie was a huge success. It grossed $223 million off of a budget of like 60. Did really well, and it's still considered one of the greatest. I guess you would call it a horror film. It's not really that, horrifying, but it's still regarded very highly. Starring, of course, Brad Pitt as Louis, Tom Cruise as Lestat, Antonio Banderas as Armand, who would later get his own novel, The Vampire Armand. Kirsten Dunst, a very, very young Kirsten Dunst, as Claudia, and Christian Slater as Daniel Malloy. Daniel Malloy was a reporter who was interviewing Louis and getting all this dirt about what it was like to be a vampire. This like huge scoop, like I'm gonna do my Christian Slater voice. Ready? Mm-hmm. Vampires exist, and he is one. That was terrible, but anyway, moving on.
Did you work on that for a while?
I didn't. Totally off the cuff. We're being spontaneous. As Louis is telling Malloy his story, he reveals that he was a wealthy plantation owner in 1791, Louisiana, which you can see behind me actually is, if I scooch to the side here, this is the plantation that was used in the film. Isn't that fancy?
Yeah.
I love Google. He flips out and loses his mind a little bit after he loses his wife and child. They die. And he's drunkenly stumbling around New Orleans, and Lestat de Lioncourt, played by Tom Cruise, who, when you watch the film, you sort of get the picture right away that these vampires are kind of ambiguous in their sexuality. And I think he kind of like is kind of like trying to seduce old Louis a little bit. And he ends up offering to turn him into a vampire. And Louis, dejected over the loss of his family and just completely hopeless, accepts. He realizes that to remain a vampire, you must kill people, and he doesn't like it. Lestat continues to revel in the murder of countless helpless people, while Louis decides to feed on rats and cats and other animals. He refuses for a long time to feed on humans. They don't really get along well, but Lestat wants Louis with him. Louis decides he's going to take off, so Lestat turns a little girl, Kirsten Dunst as Claudia, into a little baby child vampire, which is super creepy.
Who will never grow up.
She'll never grow up, and that's a theme in the film. She talks a lot about how she's going to mature hundreds, if not thousands, of years, but she's going to always be seen as a child and remain in a child's body. It keeps Louis around. They raise her as a daughter. Louis has a super close relationship with Claudia, and eventually they realize that Lestat is expendable, and they come up with a plot. Claudia kills two little boys, lets them die, drains their blood, and gives it to Lestat, which apparently is like vampire poison. So Vampire's like, Vampire, his name is not Vampire.
Then Vampire's like,
and then Vampire be like, girl.
The Vampire starts talking like Christian Slater.
Yeah. So Louis And Claudia formulated this plan. Lestat drinks the blood, and he's like, "No, you have killed me!" And then they slash his throat. I'm stone cold sober right now. This is ridiculous. So then they dump him in a swamp, right? And he describes after he, miraculously survives, he comes out looking like the Swamp Thing, and he tells Louis and Claudia, "Oh, I survived off of frogs and alligators and all these things," right? He was a leprechaun right there in that voice.
Accents
are not on point today.
Our stars and rainbows, clovers and...
I survived off me Lucky Charms.
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph.
So anyway, Claudia and Louis appropriately freak out because Swamp Thing Lestat has returned. And so they basically knock him down and set his house on fire, and then they run away. They travel around the world as father and daughter. Eventually they find the theater of the vampires. There's a French phrase for it, but if I'm bad at normal stuff that I'm good at today, I'm definitely not trying to speak French. So they find the vampire Armand, who is doing this vampire show where they're making the audience think that they're doing fake vampire stuff, but they're really just straight murdering people on stage for an audience, which is super savage. He wants Louis to stick around. Louis says, maybe. And then I kind of glossed over this part that at some point, Claudia decided she wanted a mommy. And so Louis and her, they turned a woman named Madeline to kind of be their companion.
Last all of a scene.
Yes. That's probably why I almost forgot it.
Yeah.
So they end up getting put in a well as punishment for killing Lestat, killing him. So they put Madeline and Claudia in a well where slowly the sun starts to go over them and it turns them into ash. They are dead. Louis the whole time was trapped in some kind of a metal coffin situation and lived. And then Armand is like, please join me. And Louis is like, nah, you killed people that I like. And so I'm out of here, bro. So he wanders around again, dejected over the loss of his companions. And he finds Lestat. Lestat is this creepy zombie looking version of himself hiding out in a crypt in New Orleans. And he's like, "Oh, please join me, stay with me, blah." And Louis is like, "Nah." And he takes off again. So that is where the story sort of ends, that he is telling Daniel Malloy, Christian Slater. And so there's a scene where Louis kind of flips out and he's like, "You don't know what it's like, rah!" And he pushes Christian Slater up against the wall and he's like, "Do you want me to bite you?" And he's like, "Yeah, maybe, yeah." And there it is again. So then the film ends with Christian Slater driving in a car, a classic convertible that is probably out of his price range, over the Golden Gate Bridge, and Lestat pops like a jack-in-the-box out of the back seat, and he attacks Malloy, and he tells him he's going to give him the chance that he never had, and that is to choose whether he wanted to be turned or not. And fiend. We don't know if Christian Slater wandered the earth for a millennia saying, "Hey, can I make you a vampire?" We don't know.
It would have been better if Lestat was in the trunk and he was just like, "Get him all." This trunk is very heavy, Guillermo.
Actually, there was that the scene in What We Do in the Shadows, which we both love, by the way, where they were in the well. Remember?
Yeah.
And Colin came in with the umbrella. It was kind of a throwback to this, because were they in the well because they got in trouble?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That was a punishment.
Yeah, as punishment for
killing
vampires.
And they were put in there by a traveling troupe of actors.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
It was basically the interview with the vampire scene.
Yeah. Tricky.
So do you feel like this movie held up for you?
I could watch this movie once a month for the rest of my life. I love this movie.
I thought I did too, but then like as an adult and you're watching it, you think like there's some things that are just like, if curtains in a house can keep the sun out, right? And vampires can walk around their house because of that. Because you see there's a scene where Claudia's like skimming the walls and the shadows so that the sun doesn't touch, right? Why when you're in the well, you're wearing 2 huge dresses? Just get underneath the hoop dress. Yeah, be like, I got you guys. When they open the door, they think you burned up. You're like, yeah, psych. You know, and then there's other scenes in it like where they're not really explaining it. Like I kind of got the impression that Antonio Banderas' character is the person who turned Lestat.
I have to dig back like 2 decades in my brain for the last time I actually read these books. I don't know. Someone who knows more, who remembers more about this situation, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, Anne Rice.
Yeah,
just down here.
If Kevin Feige listens to our Marvel shows, then I know Anne Rice is listening to this one. Hi, Anne.
Yeah. So I think that
hi, Christian Slater.
Christian Slater. He's right now just like, that's a horrible impression.
It's like looking in a mirror. You don't listen. You don't hear your voice in the mirror.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But overall, I think the movie totally holds up. Like I think it's the writing is good. I think that they spent a lot of time in the first quarter of the movie that they could have trimmed a little bit and explained more of the middle of the movie. The middle of the movie feels a little bit rushed, and the ending definitely feels rushed. It's just like, I walked around the earth for, this amount of years before I found myself into New Orleans, and suddenly now you're at a movie theater. Like, when did this happen? There's a lot of history that's in between there that you missed.
Right. And we get the impression, that Louis is like this huge character that Anne Rice like really focused on. But really that book is about Lestat. And the next book in the Vampire Chronicles is called The Vampire Lestat. And Lestat just keeps on coming back. It's funny, Anne Rice was like super mad that Tom Cruise got cast as Lestat. She thought it was a terrible casting, and she was like talking all kinds of trash about it in the media. And then after it came out, she was like, I was so wrong. He was perfect. He really, as soon as I saw him on screen as Lestat, he was Lestat to me. And now when I reread old stuff, that's who I picture, which is pretty high praise from somebody who was so invested in that character. If any of my work friends are watching this, we have argued about this a lot on social media. So you can give your opinions about the casting down below.
And that's perfect timing too. If you guys feel differently about this movie or you feel the same, put it down in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe. We're going to have a new giveaway coming up, Scarlet Witch Funko Pop at our 350 subscriber mark. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at
We Them Nerds.
So this is our Throwback Thursday interview with a vampire. I'm sure you appreciated it as much as we did. Make sure to follow below for our makeup tutorials. That's coming up next.
And ASMR.
Oh, and then Tony's also going to do a killer Christian Slater how-to.
Yeah, I'm going to do a full Christian Slater accent tutorial. It's coming up next. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Be good. Be good to each other. For this show, I'm going to sign us off in a special way. Bat! Bye.
Bye.